Now this, girls and boys, is going to be a hard-hitting video because I will say some things which you probably will not like. A large chunk of people who are passing out, who have 2, 5, 10 years experience, even more, are almost in the unskilled bracket where they're completely out of touch with what is happening in the market, what kind of skills are required, so they are unemployable. So let's look at some signs to check if you are settling into mediocrity. Hello girls and boys, how's it going? Sometime back, I was taking some interviews for an SRE role and something happened that triggered some thoughts in me and led to this video. So, a guy that I was talking to was about 7-8 years experience, about 3 years in a large enterprise, and his profile looked pretty decent on paper. As we started the interview, I started asking him questions and most of the answers were, this is how our Kubernetes setup is, this is what we do with Ansible, this is how our Terraform is structured. And then when I dig deeper, the answers from there change to, oh, but I don't have access to that information. Oh, but there's a separate team that does that. Oh, we are not allowed to look at that part of the application, and so on and so forth. Then I went into some basic fundamental questions. Fundamental questions on Linux, on networking, even Jenkins master node configurations, basics of Kubernetes control plane, internals of Terraform, how communication is happening, protocols, stuff like that. And as I dug deeper, the guy started flattening out immediately. And I realized this is a perfect example of what I call a mediocre profile. What's a mediocre profile? It's medium. It's not too bland. It's not too spicy. So the guy, in his current setup, he's a good person. He's a good profile. Maybe he's a good performer. Maybe one of the top performers in his or her current setup. The problem is, outside of his or her current setup, he doesn't know things. Because he's been accustomed to doing things one way over years and he hasn't looked left, right, center, top and bottom. And in that process, he or she has forgotten the fundamentals. A complete misfit when you take that person out of the current organization and put him or her in a new setup. Classic mediocre profile. So the question is the IT industry favoring mediocrity these days? Do we really have to learn every single day all the tools that are coming out if you are in the DevOps, cloud, SRE, all of this area? Can you survive with bare minimum knowledge like you have survived for the past 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, maybe even 10 years? Is going to be a hard-hitting video because I will say some things which you probably will not like. But understand the spirit and the intent behind this video. The idea is to show you a mirror in privacy, because if you see a mirror, you will probably understand some things. When you understand some things, you will accept some things. When you accept some things, you will probably be ready to take some action. And when you take some actions, change will happen in life. So that's the intent with which I'm coming to you from. Hopefully you will get that intent and take this video in the right spirit. If you're new here, my name is Puri and I've been in the build, release, DevOps, SRE, software engineering area for over 2 decades. I currently work at Associate VP, DevSecOps and SRE with a large SI. You can check out my LinkedIn profile to know my credentials. So girls and boys, strap on your seatbelts. Let's get started. So let me give you some background on how technology has evolved in the last about 10-15 years, right? So about 10-15 years back, a large portion of the workforce was mediocre, meaning the talents were not so bad, but not exceptional either. The bulk was in the middle. And that was okay because not much technology changes were happening. You would be in the same job for 5, 7, 10 years. Year on year, you would get a raise. And when you did change your company, you would get a decent enough jump and life was great. And then something happened over the years where a shift started happening. The technology started to change more rapidly than before. The second thing that happened was the demand started skyrocketing because more and more tech people were required. And then the whole geopolitical situation around the world started realigning itself. And as you can imagine, geopolitics has an effect on business, has an impact on first world countries, has a rippling effect on what we do in India and in general. And then COVID happened and there was a massive reset. How a reset? Because every enterprise, every company pivoted almost overnight into a digital company. And because of that, the demand shot up astronomically and people were being paid ridiculous amounts, which is what happened with AI. And then in 2023-24, there came another massive reset with AI and all of that you've seen evolve. What happened was a couple of things. The company started demanding multiple skill sets in the same person. Also, the market demand settled down because the hype of COVID was now over. And this geopolitics started shifting completely because of elections and instability, wars, all of that has had an impact. So now, getting in 2025 and beyond, the mediocre class has shrinked dramatically. What I'm observing is a large chunk of people who are passing out, who have 2, 5, 10 years experience, even more, are almost in the unskilled bracket, where they're completely out of touch with what is happening in the market, what kind of skills are required, so they are unemployable. There is also a bigger chunk of people who have caught on to the waves, who have done the work, who have invested in themselves, and they are getting paid disproportionately. Their salaries doesn't make any sense. So these are two extreme pockets. The middle batch, which traditionally used to be the biggest bunch, has shrunk quite a lot. So let's look at some signs to check if you are settling into mediocrity. Number one, you are doing more or less the same work that you've been doing for the past 1 year, 2 year, 5 year. You might have changed the organization, but your work more or less remains the same. Number two, you haven't learned any new significant skill in 2024. Check that out. Number three, the lack of not picking up a new skill in your mind is the lack of the organization's push and the platform for you to be able to learn. In other words, you are blaming your organization for not upskilling you. You always tend to get a bad boss, irrespective of you having changed organizations in the last couple of years. And your salary has not dramatically increased in the last 2, 3 or 5 years. If you're still watching this video, I would highly recommend you pause it here, you rewind it the last couple of seconds and you watch this list again. And I challenge you, if out of these 5-6 points that I've listed, if you say yes to more than 2, my dear friend, you are falling into the trap of mediocrity. It's time to wake up and smell the coffee. Alright, so what do I do now? It's a good question. But first, congratulations that you internally have accepted that there is a problem that needs to be solved. And that is the first step towards solving the problem. Before I tell you what to do, let's look at a couple of things which not to do. Number one, do not compare yourself with somebody else. Maybe your colleague got 120% hike, maybe he got double promotion. All of that is great. You are where you are for a reason. Accept that and decide to take action and do what you have to do. Because looking at others will only give you negative vibrations and pull yourself down. So stop comparing yourself with anybody else because everyone has their own journey. Now your journey begins that you started to take control of things. Number 2, giving in to the noise. Arey, AI is going to take away all the jobs. How will I do it? I don't even know all these technologies. I am too late in my game. I have lost a bunch of years. What will I do now? Look at all my friends where they are. These are all examples of noise. Stop looking at social media. Stop looking at videos of this guy making 60 lakhs, 70 lakhs, 1 crore a month. All of these are exceptions. They are 0.001% of the top of the pyramid. What you see in a 30-minute video is the end game. What you don't see in that video is the last 2 years, 5 years, 10 years of struggle that person has done to get there. So don't watch that kind of video and get intimidated. Stay away from noise. Number 3, and which is the most easiest to do, it is too late. I am too old to do this. I have crossed 30s. I have crossed 40s. It's very difficult to learn. I'm a slow learner. I take a lot of time to learn things. I am from a non-IT background. Can I even start now and do some things? I am from a tier 3, tier 4 college. How will I even compete? All of these statements, while true, do not define who you are. What defines who you are is your mental makeup from today going forward. The past is history. Look forward with an optimistic approach and follow the steps that I'm going to tell you, and life could be very different in 2025 and onwards. Alright, so what's the roadmap? So this is my favorite question, because girls and boys, to be very honest, there is no roadmap that can be given on YouTube without knowing you in person, knowing your strengths, knowing your weaknesses, knowing your background, knowing what you have done, what you like to do, what you don't like to do. Without knowing all of this, how the heck can you find your own personal roadmap over a YouTube video? It is impossible to do it. However, having said that, I can give you some generic steps, basis of which you can create your own roadmap listening to this video and of other creators. You will have to do that work to create your own roadmap. I'll give you some guidelines. Number 1, get your basics sorted first. So what does it mean by basics? Basics of networking, basics of Linux, basics of a programming language, basics of setting up a CI/CD from scratch. All of these are fundamental basics. Before jumping into the Kubernetes and the EKS and the serverless of the world, figure this out and see if you have a gap in any of these. Because without understanding any of these, you cannot build a monument on top of this. The foundation has to be strong. Number 2, understand your current organization's implementation 360 degrees. What does it mean? Which means, as somebody who's working in that organization, understand what they're doing from a cloud perspective, from a DevOps perspective, from an SRE perspective. And it doesn't matter what your role is, what your current structure is. Talk to friends, you have colleagues, go ahead and talk to them, ask them questions, help them to explain things, look at architecture diagrams in your organization, look at documentation, RTFM. Read the fucking manual. It's an old saying, old jungle saying, still very, very relevant. Spend a lot of time on Confluence and read the documentation that your organization has put up there. Get a complete view of what is going on in your organization. Number 3, create your own labs. What does that mean? On your laptop, on your machine at home, build a project from scratch. Using those lab environments which are provided by multiple providers is great if you are a beginner. Once you have known some stuff, set up things from scratch. That's when you fail. That's when you learn things. So play with AI. What do I mean by that? If you're a QA person, then figure out what is AI doing in the QA space. How are tools automatically creating test cases today? What is AI doing in exploratory testing? What is AI doing for identifying objects, which is always a pain point? So figure out things like that. If you are in the development space, figure out what is GitHub Copilot. Several organizations are using it. figure out what are the tools out there which fit into your IDE and which give you AI capabilities. Learn about that stuff. If you're in the operation side, figure out what is observability and what is AI doing in observability. If you use tools like Dynatrace, Datadog, things like that, maybe a Neuralink, figure out the AI modules for each one of these and how it's impacting your own workflows. If you're in the cloud area, figure out the cloud native AI solutions. For example, if you're in AWS, figure out what is Amazon Q, Amazon Bedrock, SageMaker, things like that. Similarly, go on Azure, go on Google, figure out what are their AI solutions. From Google, the Vertex set of solutions is very, very powerful. Have a read at that. And then finally, volunteer for AI things happening in your organization. Every organization is doing something or the other in AI. Volunteer to participate in that. And then finally, learn in public. Whatever you do, put it on public. I have created a dedicated video on how to learn in public. I will link it here on the screen. Have a look at that. That will supercharge your journey and give you a 10x, if not a 50x return on learning everything. See you in the next one. Take care. Bye.